my God.
Poseidon Adventure is a good one for me to compare to the sort of theoretical framework that I use, which comes out of mythology and the study of the work of Joseph Campbell and this thing called the hero's journey, which is a model for most stories. I mean, they almost all have some elements of this, and Poseidon Adventure, being an adventure, has a lot of those aspects in place.
One of the classic texts that the Poseidon Adventure evokes is Dante's Purgatorio, the central movement of his Divine Comedy.
They are going deeper and deeper into the ship, and they're pushing aside dead bodies in the corridors, and several of the characters on the team are done away with very brutally and abruptly. So it's showing you, as Dante's Inferno does, all the bad things that can happen to you on the journey of life.
The tidal wave literally turns the world upside down. And these people are now in a race to survive, in a struggle to survive. And the metaphor is clear, you know, who deserves to die, who does not. It's almost like a Pilgrim's Progress.
The movie is sort of dividing the cast into those who are going to be like sheep and just go along with the conventional wisdom. But the movie is showing a way out, which is to accept the new doctrines of this new kind of religious leader.
Pray for us, but don't do this. Climbing to another deck will kill you all.
And sitting on our butts is not going to help us either. Maybe by climbing out of here, we can save ourselves. You got any sense, you'll come along with us. Grab a hold.
Faith and trust are huge issues in the Poseidon Adventure, and it all starts especially when Susan has to make a quite literal leap of faith.
Come on, Susan. Jump, we'll catch you.
I can't.
Don't be afraid. Jump. Trust us.
And from that point onward, issues of who are you going to trust are forefront in the film.
People love heroes. They want to be heroic. They want to know that we all have that within ourselves. And we do. And we never know it for sure until some sort of disaster happens.
We're cut off from the rest of the world. They can't get to us. Maybe we can get to them. You've said enough. Now get out of the way.
Reverend Scott is a leader for sure. He's a natural leader. You can see that a number of times in the film when there's a vacuum and everyone's waiting around for what to do. He jumps right in. He's the kind of guy who is sort of gung-ho about taking responsibility. He's not afraid of it. He's not that kind of reluctant hero. But he's a questioning hero who sort of knows what he's got to do in order to save the day and is willing to make that sacrifice.
Follow her.
Wait a minute. Don't you ever say please?
If it'll get you up that tree, please.
After Reverend Scott and the others have climbed the Christmas tree, they're standing by the linen service door, and we see the grief and the anguish on his face as he closes the door, knowing that those people who are left behind are going to die, and yet completely powerless to save them because they have chosen to stay behind and not to save themselves.
Rogo?
Yeah.
Bring him down this way.
All right, everybody down this way. Come on, baby.
Oh, this is a bunch of crap. We're sinking and nothing's going to keep us from drowning.
Keep moving.
Lieutenant Rogo is really the voice of trusting in systems and trusting in authorities and trusting in established ways of doing things. Strangely enough, although he's a detective lieutenant, is not a risk taker. He wants proof. He wants to know what you have seen with your own eyes. He is not one to launch out on some sort of a fool idealistic crusade like Reverend Scott.
You know what a flash fire is? Well, mister, I'm not going to let you kill us. I'm going through that door, Mr. Rogo. You can either stand aside and close that door to keep the air from coming in, or you can try to stop me.
At one point, they look at each other, and Reverend Scott points out, you know, you're really looking at yourself here, and we're not all that much different.
I think what I don't like about you, Scott, is your attitude. Or does it go deeper than that?
Maybe we're two of a kind, Mr. Rogo. And you don't like looking at yourself.
And I think there was some of that going on in the story of Peter and Christ, that these were equals on some level. They were parallel characters and just had gone down different roads in their lives, but then were brought together by this experience.
Wait a minute. May I make a suggestion, please?
It's Mr. Martin who even plays a kind of a mediating role between Lieutenant Rogo and Reverend Scott.
The rest of us would feel much more secure if you two would stop shouting at one another.
He's a kind of what I would call a reluctant hero in the sense that he didn't ask for any of this, but he does rise to the occasion. And I think that's one of the themes of the movie, is how adversity will test people. And some people pass the test and come out with flying colors because they discovered things in themselves that they didn't know were there.
Now, be careful.
Now, you think I'm planning to be careless?
The Rosens have an interesting part to play in all of this. In my mind, they represented this sort of Jewish tradition of the family, that was the value that got them through everything else.
The Rosens really serve as a voice for the film's emphasis on life and on the very deep importance of human life.
If any of us are saved, I hope it's those two children. They still have their whole lives in front of them.
Stop giving our lives away. We're going to come out of this. All of us.
And a little child shall lead them. There was a lot of emphasis on that in the film, that this young boy knows more because he's curious and because he has explored the workings of the ship.
Look, kid, this isn't some toy boat in a bathtub, so you let us figure it out, huh? Now,
I'm sorry, sir, but Charlie, the third engineer, he told me that back by the shafts, the hull was only 1 inch thick.
He knows something, and some of the other characters don't want to accept that, but that's a little bit of wisdom from the Bible, that sometimes the innocence of children is stronger or more effective, more useful in survival terms than is the wisdom of the elders.
help will be here. I'm staying right here.
Oh, there he goes. That's my old man.
Look, Linda.
I wonder if Linda Rogo plays a kind of Mary Magdalene role in different ways in this film. The obvious connection is that of the reformed prostitute who makes something good out of her life. But in another way, Mary Magdalene in the Gospels is a voice who believes at times when the male disciples do not, especially after Jesus' death and resurrection. And she is a driving force at the beginning of the film in getting Lieutenant Rogo to go along with the entire escape plan.
You get your ass down here with us, mister, right away.
Hey. You ought to watch your language, preacher. You sound like you come from the slum or something.
You son of a bitch, go help him!
Hey.
I wanted him to help the preacher because maybe, just maybe, this preacher knew something more than we did. Maybe he was closer to God than we all were. Maybe he had some power that would give us grace and let us get through and get out of it, a miracle though it might be.
There it is, Mr. Rogo! Just like I told you!
Of course, the climactic moment of self-sacrifice in the Poseidon adventure is when Reverend Scott leaps from the catwalk in the engine room out onto that big red valve handle.
You want another life? Then take me!
So it's at this moment that Reverend Scott is solidified as a kind of a Christ figure. He gives his life in the climactic moment so that everybody else can get to safety.
Reverend Scott's role is to be that kind of hero who doesn't make it all the way through, but through his sacrifice makes it possible for everybody else to do that. And that's a classic hero's journey idea.
All right, now what? Dead end.
In the closing moments of the film, Lieutenant Rogo undergoes a kind of conversion experience when he finally comes to admit that Reverend Scott was right all along. And there's a wonderful moment there where, after banging on the hull to attract their attention, Ernest Borgnine kind of stares up into the camera and literally sees the light as the blowtorch cuts through the hull.
Oh. The preacher was right. That beautiful son of a bitch was right.
The movie is part of the human potential movement, you could say, in the sense that it is encouraging us to dig a little deeper and to find out maybe some surprising powers that we might have.
It seems to me that the religious themes in the Poseidon adventure cannot be accidental. There's just too much richness there, too much that's overt, and too much that seems to be woven into the very fabric of what the story is about for this to simply be coincidence.
The movie was offering fresh sensations, and it was part of a whole trend at that time to try and shake the audience up a little bit. So it was really part of movie history.